Every high performer has found a way to manage their energy, whether unconsciously or intuitively or not, by managing their breath. Breathing is like balance. It doesn't matter how good I am at balancing. You can't teach balance. You can learn it, but you can't teach it.
This is not the episode for people who want to think their way to succeed, because thinking will not save you. When your nervous system hit hard, when you're stuck in your head, when you start to sweat, when your heart starts to bump in your chest, and you forget to breathe. That's when Dan Brulé comes in. He didn't just coach Tony Robbins, Oren Klaff, Navy SEALs, Olympic athletes all around the world. He was doing that work by helping them breathe differently. Before this episode, I knew something about breathwork because I was doing very actively scuba diving and free diving, and I'm a professional scuba diver, but I never knew it on that level. Because when Dan said to me, Nick, breath is the only system in your body which you can control, and in the same time, it can control you. It hit me very hard. It made me realize that mastering your breath, you can master your lifestyle. So if you have been fighting and navigating to stress alone, this episode might be for you. My name is Nick Graz. This is Nick Graz Show, and today with me, Dan Brulé. What was your first ever encounter moment where you said, I'm gonna do a breath working with people? How this actually happened?
Well, I was in kindergarten in Catholic school, and the priest, our pastor, came to our class one day and started talking about, the first book of the Bible, Genesis, and how God took the dust of the earth and formed the body of man, and man became a living soul. I don't know, there was just something so exciting about that. And I couldn't understand why everybody wasn't excited. And I have vague memories of it, but I remember the priest pushing my shoulders down, trying to get me to sit in my chair. And the nun was tapping me on my head. I guess I got too animated, but it was like God is breathing into us. What? Something, it was like a spark. And then I had so many occasions where near drowning experiences and getting the wind knocked out of me. And I was organizing breath holding competitions in the schoolyard, and we would hyperventilate and then squeeze each other until we passed out. So from a very young age, I was sort of fascinated with the whole breathing thing. And my first job was as an X-ray technician. And one of the easiest X-rays to take is a chest X-ray. So as a student, I was getting all the chest X-rays. And when you take a chest X-ray, you tell the person, take in a deep breath, hold it, and then click, you take their picture. And so I was watching people very carefully, because if they were breathing, when you took the X-ray, it would be blurry. So I had to watch them carefully. And the more I watched them, the more I realized that everybody did something different. The muscles they used, the expression on their face, what they thought was a full breath, what they went through to accomplish it. And I started to see that everyone's personality was being expressed and reflected in their relationship to the breath. Mm-hmm. And then I learned cardiopulmonary resuscitation. I took a weekend CPR course at the hospital. And within 2 weeks, I was up in the intensive care unit. I pushed my portable X-ray machine up into the intensive care unit, and I was supposed to be taking a chest X-ray of somebody who was in bed there. And I write about him in my book, John Doherty. He basically arrested. His heart stopped while I was standing, while I was right there. And that beep, beep, beep suddenly went beep, beep. And so I took the pillow away. I got his bed flat. I stuck the board under his back, and I blew into him, and I pumped on his chest a couple of times. I blew into him once more, and he blinked and opened his eyes. He went from being clinically dead, gray, dilated pupils, no pulse, And after just a couple of breaths and blowing in him, he came back to life. And God, it was just the most amazing day of my life. I was buzzing. I was ecstatic. I was laughing. I was crying. It was like a freaking miracle. And then my first job in the military was as a deep sea diver. And I got into special operations and underwater rescue and medical rescue. And so I was practicing breath holding. You know, if you're going to go into a smoke-filled building, the longer you can hold your breath, the better you're off. If you have to dive down on one breath, the longer you can go, the more you can get done. And so I was training in breathing just for survival. And I learned that to manage our breath, we manage our emotions, we manage our arousal, we manage our mental state. We increase our situational awareness when we breathe. And so I was already deep into breath work. And then when I got out of the military, I was my very first university professor. I came out of the Vietnam era, and one of the veterans' benefits was like full scholarship for university. And so I became a full-time student. And my first professor in education, he turned me on to rebirthing, breathwork. I found him in the parking lot one morning on the way into the class, and he was floating and he was radiant and he was giddy. And I said, Milt, you look a little weird today. And he said, oh, I did this rebirthing. It's about breathing. You'll probably like it. And so I had the near drowning experiences. And one time when I actually, not only did I revive other people, but I had to be revived at one time when I was in the military. And you don't know what you got till it's gone. And I was diving, I had an equipment failure. I headed up for the surface and I blacked out before I got there. And fortunately, my vest, I had pulled the vest. And so I rose to the surface. They pulled me into the boat, and his name was Duck, Charles W. Brooks. He was resuscitating me. And I was in this surreal kind of state, weird state. And at one point I heard this weird sound, and the weirdness of it shook me back into consciousness. It was this, and I'm going, where? A weird sound, and where is it coming from? And I guess my throat was all contracted, and it was a sound of me trying to breathe. And when I realized, hey, I'm breathing, suddenly some part of me relaxed, because I had been in pretty much a panic right up just before I blacked out. I knew I wasn't going to make it. And then as soon as I heard myself realize, oh, I'm breathing, something in me relaxed and my throat opened and the breath started pouring into me. And I found myself, I wasn't breathing molecules of air. I was breathing bubbles of light, and they were going to every cell in my body, and they were bursting, and it was ecstatic. It was cosmically orgasmic. And I sort of discovered the ecstatic nature of the breath. And for the next couple of weeks, everything made me laugh. Everything made me cry. My heart had been cracked open. Everything was so beautiful. Everyone was so beautiful. And I wanted everybody to experience this state. But you don't get too many people volunteering for seminars that require that they drown and then get resuscitated. So when I ended up at the university and I had my first rebirthing session, I had the same exact experience. It was that ecstasy and the heart opening and this connection to the universe, and just wow. And my doors of perception opened. And I thought, okay, I found a way that people can have this experience in a safe container. And sure enough, everyone I started breathing with had the same sort of miraculous experience. And this was in 1976. And I've never stopped. I haven't done anything else since 1976. And that's why I've been to 73 countries. I've literally had my hands on 300,000 people. And even somebody stupid like me, with that much practice, you're bound to learn something. And so I've gotten really good at helping people unlock the power and the potential of breathing. And you wondered about the sports thing, and I've identified what I call the different paths. Why do people come to breathwork? They come for physical healing or just well-being. They come for psycho-emotional growth and awakening. They come for sports performance, for business performance. Healers and helpers are attracted to breathwork to take care of their patients, their clients, and also to take care of themselves when they're taking on other people's energy. So many healers and helpers get burned out, and breathwork prevents burnout and it treats burnout. And then creativity, artists, performers turn to breathwork. It's a way to awaken creative energy. And spirituality. So people come to breathwork for all these different reasons, and I'm waiting for them at the door. What do you want to do with your breath? Let me know, and let's work on it. And I guarantee you that you can find a way to use your breath to up your performance, no matter what you're doing. And Tony Robbins is a real good example of that. I mean, what the heck can I teach that guy? He's brilliant. He's changed the lives of millions of people. And he uses his breath, and he understands that when you work with breath, you're working with consciousness, you're working with energy, you're working with emotions, you're working with the body. And so it's a way to get in and get under things that you can't get to through other means, like psychotherapy or counseling or surgery. Breathing is another therapeutic model or approach, and you can apply it to anything in body, mind, or spirit. So I don't know when this journey started, but I have these milestones along the way that made me recommit and start from scratch again and again.
I see it. This is amazing, actually. Somehow all your path was leading towards this, what you're doing today. You was somehow
it wasn't a choice. Yeah.
From the situation to situation, you was ending up like, okay, that's mine. That's my calling. Most of the people take breathing as a granted thing. Like, we usually do not consider that this is probably the most precious asset we have. Without breathing, we wouldn't be alive. And probably only until the certain situation when somebody would put our hand on the mouth or nose, we would start fighting for breath, for oxygen. Why do you think people very much overlook over that, whatever industry they are? What's it from your experience?
It's a very familiar pattern. The most important things, the most powerful things in life are the most basic, the most simple. And breathing is a quintessential example of that. It's literally right under your nose. You overlook it, you underestimate it, and people go, I am breathing. What's to learn? Breathing, schmeathing, yoga, schmoga, meditation, schmeditation. Who needs it? But if you work in high stakes life and death situations, you're trained to breathe. And there are millions of dollars at stake. Lives can be lost. And you have to be able to manage your energy and manage your arousal and manage your focus. And so, but the average person has their own high stakes, an important conversation with your teenage child, an important presentation at work, a trip to the dentist, handling stress, dealing with pain, managing your emotions, generating something you might call charisma or presence, connecting to people. And so the breath is the main instrument in all of those things. And people don't realize it because it's literally, what's to know? Inhale, exhale. What is there? So I've been dealing with that for a long time, and I've got that for a long time. But I tell people, look, they wouldn't be training Navy SEALs in this, or first responders or elite warriors. And look at what the ancient yogis could accomplish. And they accomplished that through the breath. So I'm really good at turning skeptics into missionaries.
That's a good point. That's a good point you're making here, because not so many people know, simply because I'm not speaking very often about that. But one period of my life, I was very active into the free diving. And I'm also licensed as scuba diver for scuba diving up to 30 meters deep. Well, can we say up to? Okay. And I know that in one period of my life when I was doing that, we was doing breath work daily. This was a routine of 45 minutes where we are training our muscles around our lungs, let's say next to our ribs, in order to be able to inhale as much as possible and to perform best possible free dive. Now doing this business where I'm daily speaking to people, where I'm very often speaking on webinars, masterclasses, and such events, I realized that somewhere I maybe forgot or overlooked myself over some parts. Sometimes it happens that during my storytelling, I run out of breath. I try to speed up the story. Because of that, my throat starts to get dry. And I realized, like, wow, being in the business is something where probably your cortisol and stress level are rising, and you have to work with it. Recently, one of the guys who was on the podcast here, Andrew Cruzy, told me that he's doing breathwork daily. And I said, like, wait a moment, this guy is selling tens of millions of dollars. He's not doing anything just for the sake of doing. He's doing based on data and science. So can you please a little bit tell me about differential industries and about variety of people's occupations you will work with, and how do you see it? In what industries it's probably the most important, in what industries it's less important, but in global it is important?
Mhm. In the stress and coping world, anxiety, depression, chronic fatigue, all those things are directly related to breathing. And so when you play with your breath, you're playing with your chemistry. There's a difference between breathing and respiration. So respiration is reflexive. It's chemically driven, biologically driven. We don't have to do anything about it. That's respiration. Breathing is where it's a behavior. So once you understand that breathing is a behavior, now you can apply behavioral science, and we can make some powerful connections. Cognitive abilities, performance levels. Breathing is the key to that stuff. And when I was in X-ray, I was 19 years old. In 1969, 1970, they started doing the first hip nailings. They put a pin in a hip. An old person falls, they fracture their hip. And so they developed this new method. At the time it was new, 1969, of inserting a pin. And the surgeon who was working for the company who manufactured these pins was traveling around the country training other orthopedic surgeons. And that's a huge business. I mean, I don't know how many hundreds of millions of dollars are spent or made every year on that particular form of therapy. Hip. Now they're doing total hip replacements. It's the way their whole synthetic, artificial hips are being put in. But and so this doctor, when I met him, all of the other surgeons were like giddy, like Christmas is coming, and I caught their energy, like, wow, these guys who are the alphas in the hierarchy of medicine, cardiac surgeons, orthopedic surgeons, neurosurgeons, they're the apex, they're the alphas, right? And they were like ecstatic and giddy and activated. And when I met the surgeon the first time, he first he was wearing a very expensive suit, and when he walked in the room, he had this elegance, he had this charisma, he had this presence, he had this confidence. And when I was looking at his breathing, his breath exactly expressed and reflected that. The word that came to me when I watched his breathing while he was doing surgery and while he was speaking, it was elegant, it was graceful, it was grounded, it was full and free and open, and yet very subtle. And so I was fascinated by the quality of his breathing. And so I thought, here's the guy in the 1%ers, right? He's at the top of his field. I wonder if everybody who's ever made it to the 1%, engineering, medicine, finance, music, you name it, do they breathe better than the average person? Are they more conscious of their breathing than the average person? Do they turn to their breathing? Do they use their breathing when others would not occur to them? And so I made it my mission to find people at that level. And I don't care if you're the best bank robber in the world. I don't care if you're the best killer. It doesn't matter. If you're the best at what you do, is there a significant visible evidence of that in how you breathe, especially when you're under stress? And I have found no exceptions to that. Zero. I've met with Indira Gandhi. I've met with presidents. I've met with hedge fund managers, no exceptions. I found one. I thought there was one exception one time. Rizvi, I have to get personal, but a hedge fund guy, big ultra billionaire guy. And my book had just come out, and my publicist was invited to a party at his place in Palm Beach in Florida. And they invited the Gypsy Kings, Gypsy All-Stars to perform at this private party. It was like ultra wealthy, way off my head. And so I had a bunch of books and I was, passing them out. And I had a chance to talk to him. I said, so, do you practice any breathing? He goes, nah, I'm not into that stuff. I go, really? You made it to the top of your field and you don't meditate? Nah, I don't. You don't practice any breathing? No, I don't do it. Are you ever observing your breathing or conscious of your breathing? No, I never do any of that. I go, well, geez, you'll be the first exception. He goes, whoa, wait a minute. He said, I noticed that at the night when I'm in bed, if the thoughts are going around in my head, problems I haven't solved, I take a couple of long, slow breaths. I give myself a big sigh of relief and I slip into sleep. I went, aha, I knew it. And he said, whoa, wait, there's another thing. He said, sometimes when I yawn, my wife yawns. And when she yawns, I yawn. So we actually have this game we play that we yawn together. I said, that's breath work. That's it. Phew, I thought you were an exception, but thank God you're not. So every high performer has found a way to manage their energy, whether unconsciously or intuitively or not, by managing their breath. And under stress, I've noticed that people, when you push, and it was my job as a medical person, rescue person, training submarine escape artists and underwater demolition experts, it was my job to push them to their limit. And then when I started noticing when someone is at the end of their rope and anxiety and they're starting to experience, like muscle weakness and they're running out of juice and they're getting close to not being able to make it. And I realized that at that point, when they're under serious stress, they've lost their ability to have experienced the breath open and expand and release and let go. So if somebody is in pain, the breath is locked up. And the breath cannot flow. It cannot open and expand. It cannot release. It cannot flow because the pain is locking the breath up. And it's not until the pain goes away that now the breath is released. it can flow. And I watch people go from a pain state to a no pain state. And every time that happened, this breath, which is a sigh of relief, it happened. They didn't do it. They didn't think about it. They didn't make it happen. It was an expression of a change in state. And the same thing with fear and panic. When you're in fear and panic, you can't breathe. And you're stuck in panic until you can breathe, but you cannot breathe until the panic passes. And every time a person was in pain or fear, and they went from pain or fear to no pain and no fear, this breath just happened. So I started using it as a technique. I started making people keep their connection to that ability, and they never got to that overstressed point. It was a way of staying ahead of the stress and the anxiety and the pain. If they could remember to breathe when they went into that experience, they were keeping up with it instead of trying to catch up, and they never lost their connection. And in those moments, I learned, look, you can't reach for your gun. You can't reach for your radio. You can't call your mother. You got to get a handle on your breathing and restore your ability to perform. Otherwise, you get tunnel vision. Otherwise, you have no grace, no flow. Everything's screwed up. And so before you say anything or do anything, first get a handle on your breath. And so I noticed there were two breathing patterns. One, I call it the sigh of relief, the ability to open and expand and relax and let go and express that in your breathing. That's going to keep you energetically grounded, centered, present, available, functional. And the other is now, it's called tactical breathing. They're actually training first responders and special operations to practice tactical breathing, which is connected breathing or circular breathing. Because if your breathing is choppy and staticky and glitchy and unrhythmic, so is everything else in you. But as soon as the breathing is rhythmic and continuous, now everything is flowing. It's like the flywheel of the body, and all the other gears, they all come into order. So I've been training those two skills, what I call a sigh of relief and tactical breathing or circular breathing, to everyone in every field. So that when you get out to the edge of your ability, it's the breathing that's going to help you go further. And so I haven't found any environments where that doesn't work.
Then, it's your opinion then, how much of peak performance is physical and how much take breath and energy control?
It's the ancient yogis invented pranayama, which is the Hindu science of breath, prana yoga. They invented it to regulate their mind. They realized that in order to regulate your mind, you need to regulate your breathing. And so breathing is a mindset instrument. When whatever quality of breathing you have, that's the quality of your thoughts, that's the quality of your emotions, that's the quality of your movements. And we can look to martial arts and even boxing, where people are trained to exhale when they strike, to combine exhaling with movement, for example. That gives the movement extra power when you put the power of the breath behind it. And it's also a trick to make sure that you're breathing when you're performing. And so people are trained, tennis players, it's part of the performance, managing energy while you're managing muscles and movements, right? So there's no difference between the mind and the body. And so it's equal. Mindset and physical fitness, there's no difference. And the breath is the thing that shows us and proves that there's no difference between the mind and the body. The breath is the connection between the mind and the body. The breath is the connection between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. And so the answer to that question is it's a chicken or an egg thing. but they're both part of the solution.
They're very much connected.
There's a physical thing. You're working with muscles and structures and anatomy, right? And chemicals, carbon dioxide, right? Oxygen, lactic acid, and brain chemicals, norepinephrine and adrenaline. And so by playing with your breath, you're biohacking. And so to me, there is no difference. And I try to get people to understand that look, body, mind, and spirit, that's it. There's a continuum, there's a unity, where it's like the sacred trinity, and you can't work with one without working with the other, and you can't change one without working with the other. And so what I've learned and what I teach is you can use your body and your breath to heal or enhance your mind. You can use your mind and your breath to heal and enhance your body. And you can use your body, mind, and breath to heal your emotions. So it's the most holistic approach to life that you can find is breathing itself.
Hey, you. This isn't for you if you want to get just better at sales. This is for people who want to truly dominate it. Either it's DMs, calls, webinars, keynote speaking presentations, or any other form, Instagram or Facebook stories as well. The game has changed. AI, it's just around the corner. So if you're relying on old sales scripts, old sales pitches, or if you're relying to learn sales from the old books written even 2 or 3 years ago, to not even speak about 10 or 20 or 30 years ago bestsellers, you're losing the game. Your sales will not perform on the best way. See, this is why I created this community. To give you unfair sales advantage in every format, every tool, for every buyer. Cold DMs, sales calls, sales pitches, understanding the sales pitches, breaking down sales objection, and everything else what you need to understand when it comes to different tonalities and sales psychology so that you understand how to better perform your sales. This isn't another Slack, WhatsApp, or Telegram group. This is a community of people who want to become not just better at sales, sales dominators. It's free, and you can join it just by clicking the link below in the description of this video. Then what is the difference between relaxing breathwork, and activating breathwork, and how we should use and when we should use each of them?
Yeah. In the beginning, it's a choice, right? When most people, when they breathe in a powerful way, they don't relax. Mm-hmm. And when they relax, they don't breathe. And so the whole secret sauce, the magic, is that combining powerful breathing and relaxation. And that's an art, that's a skill. And like any skill, the 4 phases of learning any skill: unconscious incompetence, right? So that's where everybody starts, like a piano. I'm unconscious of pianos. I don't know what a piano is. And of course, I'm incompetent. I can't play a piano. But then I see somebody walk up to a piano and start playing, and I go, oh my God, can people do that? So now I'm conscious of the piano, but I'm incompetent. So we start with unconscious incompetence. And then if we're honest, we have conscious incompetence. And now here's where a coach comes in, who helps you to develop conscious competence. The 3rd level of mass of skill. And the 4th level is unconscious competence. So when I start playing the piano and I learn where to put my fingers, and I can play the scales, or I can play chopsticks or Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, I can play a couple of songs, but I can't make music. Not until my fingers know where to go by themselves. Now I'm into that next phase. And that's deep practice. So breathwork is a skill, and the more you practice, you can become an aficionado. You can become, it's amazing what you can do.
Indeed, it is.
If you practice.
Indeed, it is. And one of the things which I realized very often, trying to bring up and to give my best knowledge to my son, who is 9 years old, is that in the moments of anger, or in the moments of some tears, when he's crying because of something, he tried to tell me what happened, and then he started like, "Daddy, you know," and he started to stutter, and then I tell to him, "Okay, calm down." Take a deep breath. Let's go. Like one, two, one, two. Now, when you're calm down, slowly tell me what's going on. Then he can explain me. Then it goes like a river, like a flow. So I would like to hear now from you, from somebody who is an expert, right? How does breath help regulate intense emotions, anger, fear, grief in real time?
Yeah. The first thing that I learned or recognized is that every emotional state, every psychological state, every physiological state has a corresponding or associated breathing pattern or breathing quality. And we know this. When somebody is angry and upset, their breathing is different than when they're peaceful and calm, and their breathing is different. And every time you
Absolutely, yeah.
change your state, your breathing pattern changes. And the magic of breath work is it's a two-way street. By changing your breathing pattern, you can change your state. And so what you have to realize, first you have to, I call it liberate your breathing. You have to restore your breathing to, natural full capacity. And we don't realize that every emotional shock, psychological shock, physical pain that we've experienced put a little inhibition on the breathing. And then when we recovered from that shock, we didn't quite recover 100%. There's a little residual something left. I recover 90%, but it's enough to go back and continue with my life, or even 99%. And you have 1,000 shocks and traumas. And so all that accumulated stuff, there's junk that's trapped in the nervous system. There's pain and trauma and tension stored in the cells of the body. And so you need a breathing practice to clean all that stuff out and liberate the breathing so it's not stuck with all these inhibitions that were caused by these shocks and traumas. Or as a small child, if I want to be invisible, I'm going to hold my breath. You don't have to teach a child to do that in the same way you don't have to teach an antelope in the wild, right? If I'm chomping on the Serengeti plains and I'm an antelope or whatever, and I hear a noise in the bushes, I go, hum, hum. That moment of freezing, my breath just froze. And not until it's just a wind. Then the breath stopped moving again. But if you have a lot of shocks and traumas, you read the newspaper and you read 50 different negative stories and you don't realize that that's causing these disturbances in your breathing. You're not aware of it because you're focusing on the story. Or when you're angry, you're focusing on who made you angry or what made you angry. And you're not noticing your breathing. Or you're afraid and you're not noticing your breathing, you're noticing what you're afraid of. So it takes training to turn your attention to your breath, and that's brilliant. Your coaching that you gave your child is okay. Just let's breathe. Let's just breathe. Let's get the breath flowing. Let's slow down the breath. And sure enough, you're getting out of that state, and now you can communicate. You can perform. You're back in balance. And so that sigh of relief can be a life changer. I try to track breathing studies. It's just an obsession of mine. I tell all my students, listen, if you've heard about a breathing study or some articles, send it to me, because if I haven't already heard about it, I want to know. And this year, one of the most recent studies came out of the Uberman Lab, Stanford University, and it's called cyclical sighing. So you take one sigh of relief after the other for 5 minutes. It has more benefits than any meditation technique they've studied, more benefits than any stress and anxiety coping method that they've studied. A simple sigh of relief repeated one after the other for 5 minutes totally transforms your state. And everybody already knows how to do that. It's not a complicated breathing technique. But the deeper you go into this work, then you can start refining the breath and you can unlock
Tweaking.
even more abilities. Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually very, very interesting topic for me, especially. And now it's something what I want to ask you, very connected with what I do. Many times we were seeing, for example, Tony Robbins' preparation before exiting on the stage, jumping on the small trampoline and such a stuff, like literally preparing himself. Now, I want to ask you, is there a specific breathing technique you teach leaders where they are right step before stepping into high pressure moment, into, let's say, fear of audience, energy and stuff? How this look like? Is there a specific part of breathing?
You know, there are some general rules that work for, 80% of the population, but that other 20% just can't make it work. So some techniques, they got to be customized. So, for example, Oren Klaff, pitch mastery, pitch anything, intersection capital. He's a private banker. His mastery is going into a room. You got 15 minutes and you need to walk out with a check for $5 million. He's really good at that. That's his mastery. And he talked one time, I introduced him to Tony Robbins, and Tony hired him immediately to come and talk. So now Oren's really good when he was in the room with the CEO and the CFO and the analysts and all that stuff. But put him on a stage in front of 5,000 people, and he said, Dan, my voice went up 2 octaves and my gonads were up in my throat, and I was like sweating and everything. And so I got to help me out. Let me do something before I go on stage. So we have what I call anti-anxiety breathing. And so, long inhale through the nose, visualize something beautiful. And when you exhale, release your shoulders, relax your jaw, just do that, calm yourself down, And it didn't work for him. And he said, it's not working. So we devised another method for him. Okay, if you're in a high anxiety state, let's bring your breathing up to match that state. And it's sort of like coming up to speed with the energy that's already inside of you, and then you can slow the breath down. So, we devised a method. It's called 20 connected breaths, and anybody can use this. And you'll see you can make it work for you, whether you need to calm down or whether you need to, activate, energize yourself. The same technique works both ways depending on how you do it. So this is a takeaway for people: 20 connected breaths. It's exactly what it sounds like. You're going to count 20 breaths, and there's no pauses or gaps between the breath. They're connected. Inhale connects to the exhale. Exhale connects to the inhale. And you do, every 5th breath is a sigh of relief. So you do this. So that was 20 breaths. They were all connected. Every 5th breath was a big, long inhale and a big sigh of relief. Now, here's where the emphasis is, right? If I want to energize myself, I need to lean into the inhale. If I want to relax myself, I need to lean into the exhale. So if I want to energize myself, I lengthen my inhales. I inhale more often. And if I want to relax, I lengthen my exhales. I spend more time in the exhale phase. And so this 20 connected breaths, I can use it to energize myself. I do those 4 breaths, very powerful, very active. So I energize myself. And then with the long inhale, I absorb the energy, activate. And then a long breath, absorb the energy. Now, if I want to eliminate stress or if I want to relax, I do those same breaths, but I don't do it in such an active way. And then when I exhale, I release everything. So I could use that big breath to absorb everything, or I could use the same big breath to release everything. So, and if I want to balance myself, I put equal stress or focus on the inhale and the exhale.
Depending on the outcome you want to get, right?
Now I control the inhale, control the exhale, control the inhale, control the exhale. Or I can do, these are called modes of breathing. I can do an active inhale, passive exhale. This is going to energize me. Or I can do active exhale, passive inhale. So now I do the exhale and the inhale is reflexive. It's passive. So you start playing with your breath in that different way. Active inhale, passive exhale, that's going to produce a certain state. Active exhale, passive inhale, that's going to produce a different state. Active inhale, active exhale is going to produce another state. And so there's no way to teach this stuff. You have to practice and explore and experiment, because what works for one person might not quite work for you. So, you know, concepts get you nowhere. Training gets you everywhere. And that's why a daily practice, you know, for example, I got hundreds of breathing exercises that I could give people. Start anywhere, practice anything, but develop a daily practice and just start experimenting with different breathing techniques until you find one that, wow, I really like this. It's really working for me. And then master it. And as soon as you master one, my philosophy is, okay, I want you to be able to describe and explain exactly what your breathing exercise or your breathing technique or your breathing meditation is. Teach it to me so I understand it and I can do it. And so I force people to just describe it, define it, explain it, and teach it to me. And so if you can do that, then what I ask you to do is I want you to imagine the opposite breathing technique. In every possible way, I want you to invent a polar opposite technique. So if you're breathing through your nose, breathe through your mouth. If you're breathing fast, breathe slow. If you're breathing into your belly, breathe into your chest. You know, invent the opposite breathing exercise and practice that until you can come back to me and give me a list of the benefits that you get from that. I got to force people to train. There's no other way. You can't teach this stuff. Breathing is like balance. It doesn't matter how good I am at balancing. You can't teach balance. You can learn it, but you can't teach it. And same thing is like whistling. You know, my father used to be able to take these fingers and he had this wicked loud whistle. I tried everything. I couldn't figure it out. I had to find my own way.
Yeah.
I can't explain to somebody else how to do that. You got to figure it out. That's what breathing is. Now, a coach can help you, can encourage you, can inspire you, but they can't do it for you. And that's the power of breathwork.
Yeah, I would say
empowering.
I would say that you basically explore and collect the data, and then this data gives you absolute the process. What should you do according to situation you want? If you want to get more energized, if you want to get powerful before the stage, before webinar, workshop, masterclass, use this one. If you want to calm down yourself and manage the stress, use that one. So this is absolutely brilliant. I never before even thought about how this can work. Now I'm having already several questions without planning to ask you that. But here is the thing. We are all witnessing that Alex Hormozi is wearing a nose stripe in the order to kind of like rise his nostrils. And I don't know what is the whole point behind that, but I believe now, listening to you, that it's very connected with the way of inhaling the air and opening the nostrils so that he can somehow manage what he wants to get, more calmness or more energy. Is there any connection between that, or it's just my interpretation?
Yeah, no, it's two things. We have devices and technology and breath resistance devices you can use and all kind. Now it's really cool, wearable technologies so you can monitor your breathing and tweak it, and good coaching. So for example, if I watch you practice something, I can start to point out things that you may not be aware of that are actually blocking your progress. Like you might get great benefit, but there's a whole nother dimension and level of benefit that you can get, but you can't get to it because you're missing some important little subtle points. Like
Because
when yeah. So I taught myself to play guitar, for example, and I didn't have any lessons. And I could play chords, I could strum. And at some point, I thought, well, man, I should go take a lesson. So I went to a really good guitar teacher. And the first thing he told me was, you're holding your hand all wrong on the neck. I'm holding my hand like this, but I needed to hold my hand like this. And as soon as I started to do that, it was so uncomfortable. I had practiced so much holding my hand like this that when he tried to correct me and do it right, I had to start over. I had to relearn, and it was uncomfortable. And I said, the heck with it. I'm happy with what I'm doing. I can play. I'm happy enough. I didn't want to become the best guitar player in the world. And so I didn't need to get those refined skills. So when I watch somebody breathe, like Tony Robbins, the first time I worked with him, I realized, man, I've never studied his breathing. So before we work together, I need to study his breathing. So I Googled around YouTube and I picked a 35-minute talk. I don't even know what he said. I wasn't interested in what he was saying. I was meditating and analyzing his breathing. And I noticed something. For example, when he was feeling something strong, I could see this. He was doing this tightening with his jaw, and you could see that in his temples, this thing with people, and you see this dicka happening. And so I noticed that. That's determination. That's power. That's courage. And it was showing in what he's actually doing, but it's creating tension. And I also noticed that he went 35 minutes and he never took one single breath through his nose. Public speakers do this. Disc jockeys do it. You develop the habit of mouth breathing, and you don't realize it. So I had to look again. I thought, well, maybe I missed it. And sure enough, I did miss one time. He was listening to somebody in the audience ask him a question, and he shut his mouth and he took a breath through his nose. But that was once in 35 minutes. And so when I met him, I noticed two things. I said, I noticed, Tony, when you're breathing, show me the breathing you like. And if you don't, and so powerful, energizing breath. He's Tony freaking Robbins. Of course he would love that breath. That's perfect for him. It reflects his personality. And so I said, but every time you do that, you're clenching your jaw.
Yeah, I could.
And I can share this because he's talked about it publicly. When I first got work with him, I said, what do you want to work on? And he said, high blood pressure. I want to handle blood pressure. And so I said, well, here's a couple of things. First of all, every time you breathe in, you're breathing in with such passion that you're actually clenching your jaw. And so you're putting stress on your system. So I want you to, when you breathe in, deliberately relax your jaw. And as soon as he did that, his blood pressure went down. It went down by 15 points and it never went back up. That's one of the reasons he became a great fan of mine. One little thing, and high performers are like that. A little tweak is enough. They parlay that into a huge advantage. Like top athletes, the 10 best tennis players in the world, let's say, they're all so close on their skill level that on any given day, anyone can beat anyone else. They had a little more sleep, they got a little more focus, whatever. They got a little edge, and that's enough to win the day. Well, breathing can be that edge. For people who haven't really dove deep into it, they can find their way to use their breath to give them that little extra edge, a little bit more self-knowledge, a little more relaxation in key moments, a little more energy in certain moments. And that's all breath control.
Look here, we're speaking all the time about extreme situations. You want to get energized or you want to get calm. What about if people wants to get into the clarity, creativity, into the state which is somehow balanced in between very energized and between, let's say, between logic and emotion, decision making. How to get to that state? Like, which power of breath play role and how does it play role?
So creativity, right? That's the theme we're talking.
That's right.
So, all right. So one of the best teachers of creativity that I've met, who's really good at understanding creativity and helping people awaken their creativity, is Barnett Bain. He's got a book called The Book of Doing and Being, and I think that's his website. And in this book, he's got like 30 or 40 different exercises and processes to awaken your creativity. And he has a beautiful, powerful insight and understanding into creativity. First of all, creativity is not born in the head. Creativity is a feeling thing. It's an emotional thing. It's a body thing. The original creative impulse registers in the body, and then we send it up into the head to work out the logistical, technical stuff. But creativity is not born in the head. It's born in the body. And most people are living in their head because, and he used the example of, if you take a puppy or a kitten away from its mother, you have severed an energetic bond. And the mother's not happy. Where are you going with my baby? And the puppy is not happy. It's like, like you. And so that happened to us. The separation from the mother at birth, laying in a crib by yourself while your mother was in another room, and that energetic bond was not there. And so that's why when you bring a puppy home, for the first 3 nights, it cries all night. It's processing the severing of that energetic bond with the mother. And the baby experiences overwhelming feelings of aliveness. And that's how Barnett Bain talks about it. They are distressing feelings of aliveness, but they are feelings of aliveness nonetheless. And so once we recognize that anxiety is actually aliveness, then that cognitive reframing gives us a way through, right? So he has a practice that he does. He teaches workshops on creativity. And because he said, Dan, if I were to do a workshop on breathing, nobody would come. I live in Hollywood. Everybody wants to be creative. And he feels whenever he wants to do a workshop, he's a film producer, a director, very creative filmmaker. And so he has no problem filling a workshop with people who want to learn creativity. So he waits until they get in the room and he closes the door. And the first thing he says, this is all about breathing. Now they can't escape. And he has them do a test. And so here's a test anybody can do. First of all, you do everything wrong. So if anybody has read anything about breathing, they know that proper breathing is breathing through the nose. Nose breathing good, mouth breathing bad, right? Diaphragmatic breathing good, chest breathing bad. Most people do a little superficial study of breathing. They're going to find that everywhere. So the first thing he does is he turns it upside down. Okay, we're going to breathe through our mouth and we're going to breathe high in our chest. And if anybody's listening right now, try it yourself. Because at some point when you were a small child, you felt this overwhelming, distressing feelings, and you managed to cope with them in your own way. And the way that you manage to cope with them is you abandon ship. You left town. You got out of your body. And so you disconnected from the source of your creativity. And so the only way to awaken your creativity is to get back into your body. The only way to get back into your body is to breathe. But when you breathe, you wake up all the feelings that frightened you out of your body as a 2-month or 2-year-old child. So, and Tony deals with this too. If he has 10,000 people in an audience, what's the percentage? Like 3 or 5% of the population is suicidal? That means in a room of 10,000 people, you got 30, 40 people who are literally suicidal. You have to be careful what you tell them to do, you know? And so Barnett tries to be very careful. So he starts with just 10 breaths. And anybody listen, just try it and see for yourself. You're going to breathe high up under your collarbones, wide through your open mouth, with a wide open eyes and like even a panic look on your face, right? So you do this. And if people are doing that already, you might feel your throat getting dry. Already you're getting dizzy. Already maybe you're getting a headache. You have just uncovered the feelings that you are afraid to feel. And by avoiding those feelings, you are blocking your way back to your own creativity. You are waking up the feelings that frighten you out of your body. So then all you need to do is learn how to breathe in the presence of those feelings. So you just adjust your breathing, and you don't stop breathing to make the feelings go away. You just make the breathing more gentle and continuous until your throat is no longer dry, until you're not dizzy anymore, until your headache goes away. You have just healed yourself. You have just removed an obstacle to your creativity, right? So that's where you need to start, you know. And he, on his website, he's got a little test your creativity. And he's got these cool little stories, you know, like you're out in the desert, there's nothing, and there's a stone. And of course it stands out because there's nothing but sand. And so you walk towards that stone and you see just under the stone a little plant growing. What do? Think about, wow, how did that plant get here? And what kind of plant is it? And wow, isn't it amazing that the plant in this desert could grow? Or, you know, what's the... So you're up in your head.
Yeah,
and then
absolutely.
A, you do that. B, you do this. You know, B, just relax and just be present. You know, and so he's giving you tips on how to be creative. You just take his test. And breathing, if you want to feel something you've never felt before, you need to breathe in a way you've never breathed before. If you want to unlock some capacity, you have to find a way of breathing that literally unlocks that capacity. And and that's why I have a book, and that's why I have online courses, and that's why I have a website, so people can go through and peruse and find something that they, you know, go, okay, this is what I need.
For them.
This is what I'm interested in. Let me grab this and see where I can go. And most people, they want to go further. If you're dealing with asthma or blood pressure or anxiety, and you practice, or depression, and you practice this breathing and you feel better, you have to go, wow, what else can I do with it? How much further can I go with it? And then you're self-motivated. And so concepts get you nowhere. Training gets you everywhere.
That's a very powerful sentence. I will write it right after we finish this episode. I want to ask you then, how often do you do breath work? Do you have some morning routine or day routine?
Yeah, I get up in the morning. I'm married to my breath. It's my love affair. It's my lover. It's my closest guide. I try to be conscious of my breathing everywhere all the time. And there are times, you know, I'm focused on something else. I'm not paying attention to my breath. And so in the in-between moments, I'm tuning into my breath. I'm feeling my breath. And I'm incorporating breathing into everything I do. I would never, ever watch a sunset without breathing it in. I'm not going to listen to anybody talk without breathing in the energy behind their words. If I'm walking down the street, I'm going to play a breathing game of inhaling for 2 steps and exhaling for 3 steps. I'm playing with my breath all the time. Or throughout the day, I keep returning to it. And you get good at using it. You get creative. How can I engage? You know, the movie Karate Kid, right? Wax on, wax off. Well, I'm doing the dishes. I breathe in, I breathe out. And so it's a way to integrate breathing into our everyday life. And then it wakes up your intuition. So for a long time, for example, whenever I got stressed or anxious or tense, I'll say physical tense, I would notice the tension building up. And so I would deliberately I vent that stress and tension. And I practice that so much that now I don't even think about it. If tension starts to build up in my system, even before I'm aware of it, my breath already notices, and my breath is activated by itself, and it vents the tension. It's working for me because I've developed a relationship with it, and it's seen how I want to use it and how I want it to help me, and it starts helping me by itself. That's training. That's training.
Are there
I'm training all the time.
Yeah, and I can see that even in this interview speaking,
It's why I teach. It's why I teach. I know myself. If I wasn't teaching, I'd be sitting on a couch, drinking beer and watching TV. And so I teach so that I stay in my own practice. I mean, I know myself. So teaching is my way of making sure that I'm constantly practicing.
Absolutely fabulous. And tell me, are there common patterns that you'll be seeing in the people who truly master their breath once they work with you, and when you see that they are on that level that you can say like, okay, that's perfect, we mastered that area. Are there common patterns in those people?
Definitely. They are more conscious. They're more aware. They're able to observe their thoughts, the effect of their words. They're conscious of their posture. They're conscious of their tone of voice. They're conscious of their emotional reactions. They're more conscious. They're more mindful. They're more aware, without exception. Mindfulness, awareness, consciousness. And there's even what you could say, their consciousness is, they have expanded consciousness or raised their consciousness, right? So they're more conscious, they're more aware, they're more mindful, definitely. And you can see it, you can sense it, you can hear it, you can recognize it. The second thing is they're good at relaxing. And they're good. It's like you watch somebody with a golf stroke. I mean, I'm a crappy golfer. Baseball I wasn't too bad at, but golf I suck at it. And I get there and the ball just goes nowhere. And you watch Tiger Woods and it's like this elegant, effortless, graceful, and the damn ball flies a mile. So there's elegance in their movement, and that comes from a certain relaxation. So I recognize that in people. They're relaxed in moments when everybody else starts to go, and they're the ones calm and relaxed without exception. And the third is that they are able to generate energy. So in the Special Forces world, in the Navy SEAL world, the Army Rangers, there's a principle that when you think you have no energy left in your battery, you still got 40% juice in your battery. You just haven't learned how to access it. And you can't learn how to access it until somebody pushes you to that point where you don't think you have any more energy, and then they push you further and you discover that you have more energy. It's that like a runner who hits the wall and they can't keep up and they don't think they can make it, but somehow they keep going, and then suddenly they're in the floor, they break through and they can run forever. And that's a kind of training. You train yourself emotionally, psychologically, physically. You get yourself out to where you can't think you can keep going, and then you just find the energy. And sometimes you catch it from somebody else. When I first found that, I was training for a serious mission. We didn't know what we were going to do or where we were going, but we knew it was going to involve a lot of swimming because we were in the water all the time. And we knew it was going to be really high stress. And so they were pumping us to get really in shape. And I was starting to lag behind when we were running one day. And I was starting, I'm having trouble. I'm having trouble keeping up. And the first thing, when I look back, I was engaging in what you could call performance degrading self-talk. I was starting to have thoughts like, I don't know if I can make it. I'm getting really tough. I'm tired. I want to quit. That's not the kind of thing you want to be thinking in that moment, right? And but one guy, Peter Kane, I'll never forget, beautiful guy, Pete, he slowed down on purpose. He didn't have to do that, but he saw me starting to struggle and he slowed down on purpose and he got on the side of me and he said, Doc, let's breathe in rhythm. Let's breathe together. And we started breathing with our footsteps, and his presence, call it love, his energy, his support, his encouragement, plus the fact that he shifted my focus to breathing. And pretty soon I was ahead of him. I was passing everybody, and I was right chopping on the heels of the guy who was in first, who was training us. And so I had an amazing breakthrough. And so it's that combination of things I talked about: mindset, relaxation, and you got to find a way to generate energy with your breath. So when you need it, you know you can breathe and you can power up, you can charge yourself. And that's a skill. And it's one of the things I teach. It's not a difficult skill because you can breathe in ways that generate so much energy. It's scary. People are actually afraid of their own power. They're afraid of their own energy. Mandela's, I remember in his inaugural speech, he quoted from Marianne Williamson or somebody, said, our greatest fear is not that we're inadequate. Our greatest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It's our light that we're afraid of, not our darkness. And I see that every day training breath workers and training people. They're afraid of their own energy, their own potential, their own power, their own light. And breath work, liberates you from that universal fear, you could say.
That's absolutely amazing. And I want to ask you, almost for the very end, what's your message to somebody listening right now to us who feels overwhelmed or lost or maybe disconnected, tired? What's your message? How do they overcome that through breath?
Yeah, I have a formula that I call the formula for transformation. Wake up. It's the consciousness factor. If you're in some dysfunctional state, you need to wake up to your posture, your self-talk. What are you focused on? Tony Robbins has answered this. You want to change your state, change your focus, change your self-talk, and change your physiology, right? And so I've refined that a bit. So you got to become aware, you got to wake up. The consciousness factor. What are you focusing on? What are you telling yourself? You've got to wake up to that, and you got to make some shift in your mindset and your focus and your consciousness. The second thing is, so that's the consciousness factor is awareness in my three-part formula. Awareness, the consciousness factor. And the message is wake up, wake up. The second is relaxation. It's the release factor. And the message is let go. If you're stuck, if you're dysfunctional, there's something you need to let go of, a point of view, a physical muscle, a thought, a belief, an attitude. There's something you need to let go of, the past, something. And the third is breathing. It's the energy factor. And the message is take charge. And so people ask, if there's only one breathing technique that I could practice out of all the possible ones, what would be the best one for me? Well, the best one for you is the best one for everyone. Find a breathing technique that makes you more conscious of the breath itself. The details, the subtle sensations in the nose, in the sinuses, sounds in the throat, movement of the chest and the ribs and the belly. Become more conscious of your breathing. And the more conscious you are of your breathing, the more conscious you're going to be of everything. The more aware you are of your breath, the more aware you'll be of your body, your moods, your words, your reactions, everything. And then which breathing exercise allows you to relax? That would be the best one, because when you relax and soften, something opens. And when something opens, something can come in, inspiration, information, and something can go out, stress, panic, fear. So versus awareness, the consciousness factor, wake up. Find a breathing pattern that just makes you more conscious of your posture, of your feelings, of your emotions, of your thought, anything. Find a breathing practice that allows you to really relax your jaw, your shoulders, your neck, relax psychologically, let go of thoughts, let go of beliefs. Find a breathing pattern that gets you good at relaxing. And the third is, which breathing exercise gives you more breath control? And if you can find one breathing that answers those three things, it wakes you up, it makes you more conscious, you get more relaxed, and you get more energized, and you have found the breath for you. And if you can't find that breath, it'll take me 5 minutes watching you breathe and seeing how you breathe to point out what it is that's going to unlock it for you. I've just worked with too many damn people. It's not ego. I rarely meet anybody who isn't dealing with something that 100 people before them haven't dealt with. It's new to them, but it ain't new to me. And so, but it's practice. So that's the breath, the single breath. Figure that out for yourself, practice, and you might be combining different breathing practices, combining a meditation practice, a mindset practice with a relaxation practice, with an energizing practice. And you invent a breathing that does all three of those things for you. Now you've got the one that's going to make the biggest difference in your life.
That's absolutely fabulous. Thank you so much for this. And for all of you guys who are listening to this podcast and who was watching and enjoyed, in the description area below, Dan have prepared some links. How can you check his book, check his materials and stuffs. I'm already on your audiobook on Audible, Just Breath, and I really enjoyed. And then I really, truly want to thank you for all your wisdom today, for your time, and for everything you share with us, because it's absolute mastermind with you today.
Thank you for giving me a chance to do what I love, man. I'm a missionary for the breath, and so nobody has to twist my arm to talk about breathing.
That's absolutely great. I really enjoyed, and thank you so much. And guys, check the description or below this audio file or video file and enjoy and start working with your breath. Until the next episode, bye for now. If you made it that far with Dan Brulé, you now know that it's not just about breathing. It's about power, presence, and ownership. Because most of the people go through their life with tightening their breath, not fully inhaling and exhaling, and they do survive, but they never arrive fully at the destination. But then, here's the proof that the body holds the truth. It's not just about oxygen, it's about presence. So if something cracked in you open, don't just scroll it to the next one. Hit the subscribe button. Not because I need one more subscriber on my subscriber list, but because you have to know that you're not alone. Ask yourself where I'm holding the tension so that actually holds me back. If this question hits you, you're not alone. Send it to somebody who have been holding their breath for a long time. Tell them that they're not alone. My name is Nick Graz. This was Nick Graz Show, and I will see you in the next episode.